I've heard a lot of experts say that fear isn't real. That is such a bunch of baloney. Fear is so real. In fact, there are probably things that you're afraid of doing right now in your life, in your relationships, at work. And the fact that you're afraid, that's robbing you of all of the experiences that you want to have in your life. I mean, if you're afraid to fly, that's going to limit your ability to travel and see the world or go visit friends. If you're afraid of public speaking, that's going to really limit your ability to express yourself and share your ideas. If you're afraid of talking to your boss or asking for a raise, that directly impacts how much money you make. Or what if you are dreaming of starting a business, or you've already started a new business, but you're afraid to talk to people and you're afraid to share your business with people? I mean, fear is something that stops us all. And that's why I'm here to talk to you, because it doesn't have to. Fear is real, but I am going to share a secret weapon that I have used for years to beat every single fear that used to stop me. Now, first, before we get into this secret weapon, I just want to cover a few facts about fear, what it is, what it isn't, and some things that you may not know about fear. So first thing, fear is a physical state in your body that is exactly the same as excitement. Let me say that again. Fear and excitement are the exact same physical state. Your heart races. You might sweat a little bit. You might feel tightening in your chest. You might feel a pit in your stomach. You have a surge of cortisol. It's basically the way that your body goes into a hyper-aware state because it's readying for action. Now, what's the difference between fear and excitement? Really simple. The only difference between fear and excitement is what your brain is doing as your body is all agitated. If you're excited, your brain's going, oh, wow, this is going to be so cool to ride this roller coaster. If you're afraid, your brain's going, no way, there's no way I'm doing that. This is dangerous. Get out of there. Don't do that. It's saying something different. So what's critical about understanding this is that we're going to use the fact that your mind is either working for you for excitement or against you with fear to your advantage. And I'll tell you about it in just a minute, how you're going to do that. Second thing I want you to understand is that you may have heard the advice, feel the fear and do it anyway. You may have heard the advice, oh, just try to calm down. Think positive thoughts. It doesn't work, does it? And there's a reason why it doesn't work. So let's go back to fact number one. When you're afraid, your body's in a state of arousal and agitation, and your heart is racing, and you're all like amped up, and you're hyper aware of what's going on, and you're freaking out a little bit. What is it like when you're calm? You just kind of chill, right? You got like this low arousal state. Very, very difficult to go from a state of agitation and being all jacked up and excited and weirded out and to a kind of state. It doesn't work. It's like trying to stop a train by throwing a boulder on the tracks. It's going to make the train jump off the tracks. It's going to cause a disaster. In fact, they've proven in research that when you try to ignore your fears, it actually makes them worse. And they've also proven in research that positive thinking alone also can make your fears worse. So, what do you do? What do you do when you're about to go talk to your boss and you feel afraid? What do you do when you have to get on a plane and you're actually terrified of flying? What do you do if you got to give a presentation and you are afraid of public speaking? Here's what you're going to do. You're going to use a strategy, the same one that I use, that has helped me beat every single fear and turned me into somebody that is terrific when it comes to a high-stress situation. This is how you do it. You're going to use my 5-second rule in combination with what I call an anchor thought, and that is going to reframe what your mind is doing so that your mind goes from feeling agitation and making you afraid to reframing it from agitation to excitement. It works like magic. Now, I have used this technique for years, literally for years. And one of the ways that I want to introduce you to it is I want to take you backstage. I want to take you backstage to a speech that I delivered this year. And what you're going to see is you're going to see me behind, the major set. I'm about to walk out. You can kind of hear the crowd roaring. My introductory video is playing. My body is in a state of arousal. I am literally, my heart is racing, my arms are sweating. Like you're gonna see this. I'm gonna tell you about it. And you're gonna watch me use this same technique I'm gonna teach you to reframe my nerves into excitement. Check this out. All right, I'm about to go on stage. There are 7,000 people out there, and it's so exciting because what they don't know is they're about to learn the 5-second rule, and their lives will never be the same again. Now, I gotta tell you, my heart is racing, my armpits are sweating. I have the exact same physiological feeling as when I'm afraid, but I'm not afraid. I'm excited. Excitement and fear is the exact same thing in your body. It's just what your brain calls it. Here's a trick that's proven by science that I use every time I speak. When I start to sweat, when I start to have butterflies, when I start to have my heart race, I say, I'm excited. I'm excited to get out there. I'm excited to talk to these people. I'm excited to share the 5-second rule. And what that does is it sends a message to my brain that tells my brain why my body's all agitated and excited. And that way, I don't feel afraid. Remember, excitement and fear, exact same thing in your body. The only difference is what your brain calls it. Go get them. Now, I want to give you one more example, just to make sure that you really get how you can use this. So a lot of you have written to me about your fear of flying, and I can really relate to that fear because I used to have the exact same fear. But I use this same strategy to conquer it. Here's how you're going to do it. So first things first, if you've got to do something that really makes you nervous or that you're afraid to do, before you're about to do it, come up with an anchor thought. What's an anchor thought? Well, an anchor thought is something that's going to anchor you so that you don't escalate any situation into a full-blown panic attack or into a situation where you screw things up. It's a way for you to anchor yourself so you maintain control over what you're thinking and how you behave. So here's an example with flying. It's important when you're creating an anchor thought to pick something that is in the proper context of what you're afraid to do. So for flying, pick an anchor thought that has to do with the trip that you're taking. So if I'm boarding a plane to fly back home to Michigan, an anchor thought might be a picture in my mind of my mom and I walking on the shores of Lake Michigan where I grew up. That's a thought that makes me happy, it makes me excited, and it's also related to the trip that I'm taking. If you have a conversation that you need to have with your boss, pick an anchor thought about how you feel after having that conversation. Maybe it's you picking up the phone and calling somebody that you love and saying, oh my gosh, it went so well. Or, you walking out of the meeting and feeling like, yeah, I survived that conversation. I feel pretty good about myself. So now that you have your anchor thought, you're ready to beat the fear. What is the biggest obstacle that we face? Tiago, it's simple. It's self-doubt. It's not fear. It's not lack of money. It's not lack of supporters. It's the fact that deep down inside, you will doubt yourself at critical moments. And here's the problem with self-doubt. Self-doubt doesn't have to stop you. The problem with self-doubt is that the second that you feel a little doubtful, the second that you start to question yourself, you physically hesitate. That hesitation has become a habit that stops you. Because the moment you hesitate, it wakes up your brain starts thinking, and then you hold yourself back. You guys know I talk about the 5-second rule incessantly. It's the title of the new book that I'm writing that's coming out in 2017. The 5-second rule is a tool that battles self-doubt. Because in those moments, those tiny micro moments, when you're faced with, should I do this or should I not? Should I speak in a meeting? Should I hold back my ideas? Should I have this tough conversation or should I wait till later? The second you doubt the option of moving forward, you hesitate. Then you think, then you hold back. That's how it happens every single time. That's how you sabotage your success. That's how you rob yourself of joy. That habit of hesitating the moment that you feel doubt is killing your dreams. The single biggest obstacle in life, Tiago, is the doubt that you feel. And the single biggest mistake that you're making is that you hesitate when you feel it. If you start to use the 5-second rule in those moments to just physically move forward within 5 seconds of feeling that doubt, you'll win. What energizes you? And that we naturally have a tremendous amount of body wisdom about that. And that every one of us has an internal fuel tank that is either empty or full. And if you're empty, you feel depleted. If you're full, you feel energized. And so if you simply are in any situation, I mean any situation, and you pay attention within 5 seconds to, does this person energize me? Do they deplete me? Where are they in the scale? You just gain some tremendous wisdom. And the simple way to start to figure out who you are and what you want is start aligning yourself with more things that energize you. So situationally, if you're lying in bed and the snooze alarm goes, or the alarm goes off, and you feel depleted, and you start reaching for the snooze button, that's a really big sign that you need to get out of bed. Now, being depleted versus energized has nothing to do with whether or not things are hard or easy. It has to do with what naturally actually either expands you or shrinks you. And so if you look at your client list and measure it depleted versus energized, what shrinks versus expands me, you have the actual map. And when you start to find the courage to make decisions that energize you and that expand you, whether they're scary as shit or not, that's when everything changes. And so that's how I actually make business decisions. I don't even, like, the money conversation comes second. It's, does this deplete or energize me? And if it depletes me, how do you move it in that direction? Or how do I say no? If it energizes me, how do I do more? Because if you are energized or expanded by something, you will do it for no money, you will do it happily, and you will suddenly wake up and say, oh my gosh, like I'm pursuing my passion. How did that happen? A lot of you feel stuck because you're waiting for some kind of external force to either push you and pressure you to change and to be great and to be amazing, or you're waiting for somebody to give you permission. You're either sitting back because you need some sort of external motivation from somebody that's going to push you or praise you or pressure you in order to change, or some life circumstance, like maybe in your past you've experienced trauma or you faced something really scary and that was the thing that made you change. And then the second thing that people wait around for is permission. Look, those may or may not come in your life. If you are somebody that is sitting around waiting for some external force to come and do the work for you, that is such a losing bet, it's unbelievable. Maybe you'll get lucky, maybe somebody will come, but more than likely, no one is coming. The only kind of force that will truly create change in your life is you, the internal kind of force. I hate to say it, but for those of you that feel really, really stuck, and you keep thinking that somebody's got to pick me, or somebody's going to discover me, or somebody's got to give me permission to write this book, it's ridiculous. This is external versus internal force. And what you have to figure out if you're stuck is, are you the kind of person that is guilty of needing, wanting, and waiting for external forces, people, an event, some outside force to kick you in the ass so that you'll finally do the stuff that you've been dreaming about doing? I want to tell you something. No one's coming. No one. The people in life that get what they want are the ones that aren't waiting for an external force to validate their dreams, to inspire them, to give them permission. It's the people that realize that success, that happiness, that control, it comes from the internal force. And what is the internal force? It's you. It's you. It's you being able to realize that no one's going to do the work for you. It's you realizing that you're never going to feel ready. In fact, even as you start working toward the things that you really want to do, you're definitely not going to feel ready, and you're going to feel outside your comfort zone, and that's normal. When you start to feel like you're stretching yourself and you're sticking your scrawny neck out there and you're taking some risks, that's amazing because you're growing. I'm trying to become a fashion and beauty blogger and earn money from it full time, but I have some kind of mental block and procrastination problem. This is something that we see over and over and over again. And it's this idea that you don't ever start. You stay trapped in your head. And if you feel paralyzed, if you've been spinning the same ideas over and over and over again, then you know what I'm talking about. You see, many of you are thinking way too big. You're attaching way too much pressure on the things that you're interested in. Until you start blogging about fashion, you won't even know if you like it. So thinking that you have a dream about doing it and thinking that you have this grand plan that you're going to do it full time, it is a complete and utter waste of your time to be dreaming that big. And let me tell you why. Because oftentimes, if you're the kind of person like Vicky that's getting trapped up here, the bigness of what you're thinking about is what's stopping you. What I want you to do if you're in Vicky's situation is I want you to stop dreaming and I want you to just start doing small things. I want you to go back to curiosity and less into crushing your big goals. The thing about life and business and success is that you have to be willing to start. And for people that procrastinate, starting is the hardest part. For people that worry, for people that think too big, starting is the hardest part. Folks that study procrastination talk about the fact that the only way to beat procrastination is to create what they call a starting ritual, which is a way to push yourself to get started. Because all the research shows that if we can push you to get started on something, you'll likely keep going. We spend a lot of time talking about mindset from the standpoint of think positive so positive things happen. And I do believe in having a positive mindset, obviously. I think that the actions that you take are way more important in terms of developing that mindset. But we don't spend enough time on what you were just talking about, which is understanding how the automatic nature of worrying about stuff all day long, how that is making you less money, how it is making you less happy, how it is disconnecting you from your spouse, how it is keeping you unhealthy, and how it is a habit that robs you of joy and opportunity and power. And it is one of the easiest habits to break. Number one, your life happens in 5-second windows. Number two, in 5 seconds, you can control what you think, you can decide what you're going to do, and you can change absolutely anything, which changes absolutely everything. And so the 5-second rule is a mind trick. That's all that it is. A fancy way to call it is it's a form of metacognition, but it's basically a hack. It's a cheat code.
Okay.
And the way that it works, and this is the challenge with getting it out there, is that it sounds so profoundly stupid, like a gimmick, that it took a while for people to actually take it seriously.
I get that.
And to really stack up the science to make, anybody that interacts with it go, holy shit, like this actually works.
Yeah.
So here's what it is. Basically, the moment you catch yourself hesitating or doubting or starting to worry or about to chicken out or shrink or shut up or whatever it is that you're about to do that is shrinking your power, you just go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What happens when you do that? Don't do it out loud because it'll scare somebody, like a psycho. And I mean, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm talking. Yes, exactly. No.
My turn.
Yes, exactly. Although I say it's so simple that people use it with their kids.
This is a Saturday Night Live skit in the making, right?
Totally.
I can see this.
I would love that because that means I've really made it.
True.
Your kids will use it on you. So my kids will use it on me. So if I have a certain tone that comes out, I'll hear my 12-year-old go 5, 4, 3. Watch that tone, Mom. Just or Mom, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I thought you were going to go to the gym.
Oof.
Yes. So by counting backwards, the kind of cheat code that you're doing in your mind is you are interrupting what are called habit loops that get encoded in the central part of your brain, and you are starting up the prefrontal cortex. It's a little trick that causes focus, and it's a lot like having a mantra, because you're shifting gears. But the thing about having a mantra is, and I suppose that as you count backwards more and more and more, you become used to it, but it becomes a habit that triggers action. So what you do is you go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, cut off this part of the brain, awaken this part of the brain, and then move. And what happens with the counting backwards is there's nowhere to go after 1. And your mind is socialized in a countdown situation to go.
Yep.
And so counting up won't work because you can keep going
forever.
and you do it in many aspects of your life, so it's actually not something that requires any focus. I'm the kind of person that believes you should always make decisions with your heart and soul. You can use your brain for math. You can use your brain to look at the fine print in a contract, but when it comes to the actual feel of the decision, you always want to go inward and check it against your heart and soul. How do you do that? Here's the simple test. Does the decision that you're about to make expand you, expand your future, or expand the possibilities of your life? If the answer is yes, then the decision is yes, no matter how terrifying it is. If you conversely look at the choice that you have to make, and the decision will shrink you, will silence you, will inhibit you in some way, then the answer is no. No matter how easy the decision is, no matter how safe the decision is, the answer is no. Now, one of the things I want to point out that when you start to use this, does it expand or does it shrink me? Does it open possibilities or does it keep things closed? Does it raise my voice or does it silence me, right? Is that there's always a short-term and a long-term impact to the decision. The short-term impact to making an expansive decision, a decision that's based in your heart and your soul, sometimes it's terrifying because sometimes it means moving, or it means changing a job or changing a relationship or having a difficult conversation or starting something new. And those sorts of things are always uncomfortable. So brace for impact, put the force fields up, but make the decision anyway. Because the long-term impact of making a decision from your heart and soul, that is where the best life comes from. Because you're living for what's true for you, not what's safe in the moment.
I think everybody has fear all wrong. People have so many theories about fear. They talk about, oh, well, I'm afraid of success. No, I'm afraid of failure. I'm afraid of intimacy. I'm afraid of heights. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid of the other thing. There's actually only 2 fears. Only 2. And if you're in sales, which you are, or even if you're not, life is about persuading people. Life is about influencing people. And fear is the invisible force that will make you ineffective at that. It will stop you. Now, I love J.K. Rowling as an example. I mean, we all know the Harry Potter series, but what a lot of people don't know about her, she talks a lot about fear. She struggled with major depression. Do you know she was unemployed and she wrote the original idea for Harry Potter on a napkin while she was on state benefits? She was then rejected by 12 publishing houses. And this, by the way, was after she was divorced, bankrupt, and a single mom of a kid. Pushed herself, pushed herself, pushed herself. She talks a lot about fear and about failure. Well, you know, we know the moral of the story. She just kept going. Of course she was afraid. But she had the good kind of fear, not the bad kind of fear.
First things first, when I wake up in the morning, I do not sleep next to my phone. The reason why I don't sleep next to my phone is because if you sleep next to it or use it as your alarm, your tendency is to look at it while you're in bed. That means that you're checking email before you've even thought about what your priorities are. Do not do that. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2, I have a pad of Post-it notes. Yes, Post-it notes next to my sink in my bathroom. Why? Well, because after I brush my teeth, haven't looked at my phone yet, I take a Post-it note out and I write the 3 things I need to focus on today. And then you know what I do with it? I stick it on the back of my phone.
Now, why would I do that? Because I have my phone with me all the time. And so if it's on the back of my phone, I'm going to get a visual cue to remind me and keep it top of mind so I stay focused on it. Third thing that I do, it's a little trick I call 30 before 7:30. What that means, I spend 30 minutes before 7:30 a.m. just focused on getting my day organized and getting a few of the things that are my top priorities either finished or further down the field. So that's 30 minutes before 7:30 a.m. That's time for me. If you utilize those three things, don't sleep with your phone. Right after you brush your teeth, write out your 3 priorities and stick it on the back of your phone just like this, and spend 30 minutes before 7:30 for yourself. I promise you, you'll be shocked at how much more focused you are and you feel. Too many of you are sitting around waiting to feel ready. You can still move forward when you're not ready. Too many of you are waiting to feel like you deserve to make 6 figures. It's about the action. Your mind, your history, your past, you will always have a million excuses not to do it, not to feel like it, not to believe in yourself. They're all bull. The only thing that matters in your life and your business is the actions that you're taking. And the more consistently that you take action, the faster you will start to believe in yourself, because you will see proof that you are not the kind of person that sits around and feels unworthy, that you're not a victim that sits by and gets sucked into other people's stuff, that you're not that kind of person. So it won't make sense to believe it anymore, but it starts with action. I believe in all of you, and I believe in your ability to get it done. But it's going to be up to you. Who is the problem? Yeah. Who's the solution? That's right. Don't wait to feel like it. That is the biggest mistake you could possibly make. Remember that you're smart. Remember that you know what to do. And just get it done.
What fascinates me about human beings, and it fascinates me about myself, is that we have such a high tolerance for suckiness.
Isn't it crazy?
As long as the suckiness is a routine. But the second you get thrown out of your routine, or the second that, whether it's because you lose a job, or somebody moves, or somebody dies, or somebody breaks up with you, or you break, like, all of a sudden, that awakens the courage in you to make a change. Because, you know, either you have no choice, or now you got a problem to solve.
Yeah.
But fighting that inertia of life is the most difficult thing in the world. I ended up getting a job with a law firm because it was the path of least resistance.
In Boston.
In Boston.
Okay.
I hated it because I went from being in the courtroom to writing briefs all day.
Got it.
And luckily, I got pregnant with our first daughter, who just is starting college, which makes me feel so ancient. I just want to, like, punch myself in the face that I have a 18-year-old freshman in college.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I got pregnant with her, and when she was born, I had horrific postpartum depression.
Wow.
I mean, the really scary kind, where you can't be alone with the baby. You're on crazy meds that turn you, not the kind you take recreationally. Like,
yeah.
These are the kind that, like, turn you into a zombie. And it was a really scary thing. And I when I kind of came out of the 8-week trance of that, I looked up at Chris and said, I've made a decision. And he said, okay, what would that be? And I said, I don't ever want to answer the question, what do you do for a living? With the response, I'm a lawyer. And he said, okay. You realize we've just bought this house and we have a kid and we have bills to pay. And he said, so here's the deal. You've got exactly 4 weeks before your maternity leave is over. You need to make $60,000. I don't care what you do for a living. That's your problem. Go solve it. And the night before I was supposed to, so I networked like a crazy person. Because again, if you're a human being with a problem, you'll solve it.
Yeah.
And so if it matters enough to you. And so I got a job, and this was the first .com boom in Boston. I got a job the night before I was supposed to go back. I've been in the media business for 10 years. When I tell you that things have changed 1,000%, let me just give you an example. My first media deal, I was signed by ABC. That's right, ABC, the big dog. Crazy syndicated shows. I was signed by them to do a talk show deal. Now, do you know what that meant? There was some executive that was looking out over the sea of talent. They were meeting with agents. They were picking people. They were doubting you. And then guess what? If they did pick you, they owned everything. They told you what to do. Oprah's an anomaly. The game was gatekeepers, a few media players, a sea of competition, total scarcity. Now, what is it today? Holy it's unbelievable. If you have an iPhone, you can have a show. If you have an idea and you're willing to put it out there and you're willing to start sharing yourself on social media, you have a syndication platform. There is no one doubting you except for you. And that's why I'm sitting here imploring you. I'm telling you right now, if you have a business, if you have aspirations, if you have a dream, the single biggest opportunity in front of you is to put it out on social media, to start talking about the things that interest you, to start sharing your ideas, sharing and documenting what you're up to. I guarantee you, you start doing that and you're going to start amassing an audience that you had no idea was out there dying to connect with you, to learn from you, and to grow with you. Gave a speech yesterday in Dallas. After the speech, it was a big audience of people in financial services. A guy dressed to the nines in like one of these super slick suits comes up to me. He says, "Hey Mel, you know, really love the 5-second rule. Do you mind if I give you some feedback?" Feedback? Don't you hate getting feedback? And then when people actually preface it by saying, "Can I give you some feedback?" I don't know about you, but literally my butt's like, it just cannot stand it. I immediately go on edge. But here's the thing about feedback. You have to take it. You have to take it. It is critical. Critical, critical, critical. So I want to tell you, number one, what the guy said to me, my reaction, and then I want to give you my philosophy about feedback. Because what the guy said to me was so valuable, and it was also really hard for me to hear. Here I am after the speech. We're surrounded by a big group of people. He walks up to me and says, when it's his turn in the line, "Can I give you some feedback?" I immediately tense up, and this is what he says. "Mel, I love the concept of the 5-second rule. Super cool idea, can't wait to try it." Okay, now comes the punch in the gut. He said, "You called it stupid so many times during the speech, it was off-putting." Doesn't that sound terrible, that word? And he said, "I could tell that you were doing it on purpose." He's right. In fact, you called it stupid so many times, and yet you have these insanely powerful examples of how people are using it. You came off as defensive. When he said this to me, I literally, you know how you feel like you're shrinking in life, where you're like standing and you're full size, and then all of a sudden somebody says something, you're like, I just want to disappear right now. And the reason why it was such a zinger is he was right. He was absolutely right. You see, I do call the 5-second rule stupid because I'm in front of so many analytical audiences. I'm in front of skeptics all the time. And so I use it as a preemptive way to disappear the biggest pushback on the 5-second rule, which is on its face. It sounds so stupid and so simple. There's no way it could be so powerful. The problem is I've gotten lazy and I say it too much. He's 100% right. And by hearing that feedback, I can make a really simple tweak to my speech. I can call it stupid once or twice in the very beginning, and then I can transition to calling it something that's very simple and powerful. Now that's going to help me reach more people with the 5-second rule. And here's what I want to say about feedback. Feedback is intense to receive. It really is. Because you are exposing yourself to critical opinions. It will make you feel very vulnerable. The way that I handle feedback and process it, I'm very clear about the things that I will receive feedback on, and I'm very clear about the things that I will not receive feedback on. And the reason why is, if you don't listen to any feedback at all, guys, you're never going to improve. You're not going to ever do anything new. So no feedback means nothing new. If you listen to everything that everybody says in terms of feedback, if you allow everybody to weigh in on everything, it's going to become so paralyzing that you will do nothing new. So the key with feedback is knowing yourself and knowing what you actually accept feedback on and knowing what you don't accept feedback on.
So many of us have this perfectionism gene, and the reason why we're perfectionists is we're trying to insulate ourselves from criticism. That if you get it perfect, no one will give you feedback. If you get it right, nobody's going to criticize you. If you do it perfect, then no one will be able to attack you. And the problem with that, and that's just another side of the same coin, which is the fear of disappointing people. You're managing not disappointing people, not by lying and not by being codependent, but by actually trying to be a perfectionist so that nobody criticizes you. So let me tell you a story about the fear of disappointing people in my own life, because this is the biggest trigger in my life. I mean, it goes back to being in 4th grade, right? It's there. And this is another thing, I literally have to remind myself of this, everybody, every single day. You cannot remove the things that trigger you. You can't. If you've been doing a pattern since 4th grade, there will be things for the rest of your life that will trigger that pattern to come up. But you can always choose not to repeat the pattern. So you'll be triggered and be afraid that you're going to disappoint somebody. That's real, that's normal, it's natural, it's part of being a human being. I think it's interwoven into every relationship where you love somebody. But you don't have to behave the way that you always behaved when you're nervous about disappointing somebody. So let me give you a dumb story. You ready? When my husband and I got married, my father gave us this really incredible gift. He gave us an antique pool table. I grew up in Muskegon, Michigan, where Brunswick was founded. And my dad has a hobby of going to garage sales and estate sales and buying old, dilapidated pool tables, and then he restores them. So when Chris and I got married, he bought us an old, dilapidated pool table from the same era as our house, which is the 1870s. He restored the whole thing, and then recently he and I rented a U-Haul, and we drove this sucker from Muskegon, Michigan to Boston, Massachusetts. My dad and I took a road trip. Get there, and we assemble the pool table in what used to be our playroom. Fast forward 3 or 4 years, the speaking business takes off, my business starts to grow, we have people that work for us, and my kids are older. We don't need a playroom, we need an office. The pool table is in the middle of this thing. For the first 2 years of having the office, we kept the pool table there. Why? Because I didn't want my dad to be disappointed, because I love him. Now, he visits our house twice a year for 2 or 3 days with my mom. And I kept this thing occupying a third of our office for 2 years. And then I realized I'm being ridiculous. I'm being absolutely ridiculous. Now here's the thing. Will he be disappointed if I take the pool table down? Absolutely, definitely. There are always going to be things that you do, decisions that you have to make in your life, in your business, for your family, that will disappoint other people. It's unavoidable. But the fact that he's going to be disappointed should never be the reason that I don't do something that is aligned with my values. Now, let's take it a step further. When you make a decision that is likely going to disappoint people, or that does, still make the decision, because it's your life. There's nothing worse than when you start to rob your future and your life and your happiness because you're so focused on other people. However, if you love people, you can still take care of them when you make that decision. So let me go back to the example of the pool table. So I knew I was going to take it down. I knew my father was going to be disappointed. I was disappointed. I don't have a big house. So I don't, I don't have the room for a huge pool table. I don't have a finished basement like a lot of people. I don't have like a cool garage game room thing like I just don't have it. I called him first and said, I need to talk to you about something. You know, the pool table, I love the pool table. Dad, my business is growing so much, I actually need an office. And, oh great, it'll be great in the office. And I'm like, well, yeah, it would, except I have, 3 or 4 people showing up, and we got to put some desks in there for now. Even went down, well, you could put a piece of plywood, and they could work on the pool table, and then they could do the thing, and then the thing. And now my heart is racing because I don't want to disappoint my dad, and now he's fighting for and I had to just say, for me, Dad, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to hire professional movers in the pool table business to disassemble this with love and care. We're going to store it beautifully. When I either get a full-time office off-site, or I build a barn, or I build a different house, this will have its own beautiful room dedicated to you. So we had this beautiful conversation. Now, was he disappointed? Absolutely. When they come to the house and visit, which they just did, and they walk into the office, do I feel a pang? You better believe I do. It doesn't matter. That's all normal. I still need to make the decisions that I need to make. And the difference, what's changed, is how I relate to that fear. So instead of what I would do in the past is I would make a decision that doesn't serve me, I'd leave the pool table, and then I'd be all about it. I'd leave the pool table as a way to make my dad happy, but it makes me miserable to leave it there because I need the space, right? And then I'd be kind of annoyed, and then he'd come and I'd fake play pool because I kind of want to, you know what I'm saying? Like, we do all this bullshit that's not real. And what I've been able to do for myself in some instances, when I catch it, is to hit it head on and to be authentic and to still take care of people. And what I've also come to learn is that people can be disappointed in you and they still love you. You know, you're never gonna get around this. Everybody in your family is gonna be disappointed with you, probably once a day, probably. And you have the ability to retrain how you respond to that trigger that rises up in you where you start to fear that you're disappointing somebody. And the answer really is make the decision that's aligned with your values and the thing that supports you, and then take care of the person by being honest and straightforward about it, dealing with their disappointment head on, because that's really the adult thing to do, and that's what you do when you love somebody. The way we've all been handling it, myself included, is manipulation, lying, resentment, withholding, and that doesn't serve anybody.
My life changed a couple years ago when I discovered something called the progress principle. It is a principle that was written about in the Harvard Business Review. It's based on a tremendous amount of research done by a professor over there, and what she determined is that people that feel happy and successful and fulfilled by their lives and work, they all have one thing in common. They feel as though they're making progress on something that matters. So I read this little bit of research and I started applying it to my life. And what I do, as stupid as this sounds, it really works. I don't focus on balancing everything. I focus on just making sure that I make progress on one thing a day. That's right, you heard me. One thing a day that matters to me. Now, if I can make progress on one thing a day that matters to me, then I can let go and let the rest of my day get hijacked by kids, by spouse, by phone calls, by emails, by social media, by all kinds of things that come up and tend to hijack your day when you're a busy person, when you have a family, when you're married, when you got a lot going on. And so by focusing on one thing a day, I feel the sense of control and the sense of progress that science tells us will make you happy and make you feel more confident and actually make you more effective at getting things done. It also frees me up to be more present with my kids.